How's it going on, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be going over my top 50 1.0 for the 2024 NFL Draft. Of course, we're back on here on my 2024 NFL Draft board. A few things to mention with this list is that you can see, obviously, the numbers, and you can see that the grades. All right, so talking about the grading system a tiny bit, this is, of course, my 2024 NFL Draft board. You can find this, you can find access to this board on my Patreon, but obviously, blue guys are the first round grades, green are second, yellow are third. But that's kind of all you're going to need to know for this video in the top 50. All right, so actually going into my top 50, I currently have 5 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 12 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, 8 offensive tackles, 1 interior offensive lineman, 7 edge rushers, 4 interior defensive linemen, 2 inside linebackers, 8 cornerbacks, and 1 safety, all in my top 50. Of course, this is my 1.0. Some of these these rankings are based off of what I think. These are not consensus rankings. Let's obviously get right into it. So first on the screen, you guys can see the top 10 is right here. I don't know how much of my top 10 I'm actually going to move because I'm really set on a lot of these guys in the rankings currently. I think my top 7 is pretty much guaranteed to stay. I have so many blue chip guys, my potential Pro Bowlers, guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, the dude is, go watch my prospect breakdown on Marvin Harrison Jr. The link is probably going to be in the description for my prospect breakdown series. Marvin Harrison was the first guy that it did, and he's my favorite prospect in the entire draft. I think he is potentially a future All-Pro at the position, which is such a coveted thing to have for the wide receiver position, as well as him being like, dude is just, he can run routes, he's fast, good after the catch, insane at the catch point, dominant wide receiver. We've seen that for 2 years. Biletnikoff winner, 2-time All-American. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy. And then you got Caleb Williams. A lot of people don't like Caleb Williams because of truly because of external factors. You know, dresses, painting his nails. A lot of people don't like that stuff. For me, is that going to factor into how I evaluate his film? Like, come on. No, obviously it's not. But Caleb Williams, to me, I think is the closest thing is a very similar mold of like Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes. Those have been 2 successful quarterbacks at the NFL level. And I think if Caleb Williams becomes a Pro Bowler and he helps probably the Chicago Bears or the Commanders out, and he is playing at a Pro Bowl level, I think that's going to be worth the number 1 overall pick. I do like him a lot. Do I think he's going to a future MVP? Maybe not. I think he does hit that Pro Bowl mark, though, which is obviously a blue chip prospect. I think he's worth the number 1 overall pick. That's why I gave him a 7.5, which, by the way, this is out of 8. This is not out of 100. A 7.5 out of 100 would be like a 95, would be like a 96. And then Brock Bowers, he's my favorite tight end I've ever gone over. I think he's a generational tight end prospect. He literally is like he's basically like if you put a big wide receiver and you put him at tight end. Obviously the size concerns, like, I don't really care about that because he's still big enough to warrant being like a tight end, more of an H-back, but he's a receiving monster. He was the best receiver at Georgia for 3 straight years, is 2-time John Mackey Award winner. Brock Bowers is that guy. There is no question to me that I think he'll have NFL success. And then you get to a guy like Drake May, where Drake May is another one of my favorite prospects. He is such an electric, creative player. I just released my prospect breakdown on him 3 days ago. Go watch that. I like Drake May a lot. I think he does have more boom or bust than Caleb Williams because he does make some bad throws. But he's got great arm talent. He's got a cannon, and he's got a creative nature to him, like a Josh Allen style of playing, as well as, you know, he led college football in EPA in 2022, which is, you know, a huge sign of quarterback success. And then you got Malik Neighbors, a guy that I like a ton. He is, you know, basically a bowling ball like a receiver, 6 foot, 200 pounds. And he's fast. He can accelerate very well. He's got a great change of direction, and, you know, he's got the speed that he can just turn the corner and he's gone. Good route running as well. I like Malik Neighbors a lot. I already finished my prospect breakdown on him. I'm probably going to release that I'm recording this on the weekend of President's Day weekend, so I'll probably have it this weekend, honestly, or not this weekend, but the week of President's Day, which is going to be like the 17th probably. But like Neighbors a lot. And then Joel, I think, is a stalwart offensive tackle. He's a blue chip tackle to me. His lower half is very sturdy. He's got a good long. He's got the size at 6'8", 315. He has got the wingspan. He also has a very quick first step off of the line. He reminds me a bit of like Elaine Thomas a little bit, which is very good comparison for him. But the only thing that I think is a little bit missing with Joel is the like raw power Mauler style of ability. He's technically so sound. He's not the most imposing player, which for some people that is a deal breaker, especially for like I don't know, a guy like Dan Campbell would not like Joe Alt. And then Rome Odunze, one of my favorite players in all of college football last year. He's a contested catch acrobat. Brett Coleman compared him to DeAndre Hopkins. Do I see the DeAndre Hopkins comparison? Not a little bit. I think Rome Odunze is a bit more of a fluid player. I think he reminds me a bit of if George Pickens had a more developed route tree. And was a little bit more fluid, but Pickens is a pretty fluid player. But I like Rome Odunze a ton. And then moving on to Byron Murphy II. Byron Murphy II is a guy that I'm arguably too high on because last year I had a little hot take that Zay Flowers was one of my favorite players in last year's draft, and I put him at 6. And did Zay Flowers deserve to be put at 6? No, but I mean, Zay Flowers led the Baltimore Ravens in receiving yards, and to me, like, this is the equivalent of how high I was on Zay Flowers last year with Byron Murphy. I think he's a pass rush monster within the interior. He played the nose and was forced all the double teams. Meanwhile, you thought T'Vondre Sweat, the 364-pound guy, would get all the double teams. But no, it was Byron Murphy II, and Byron Murphy II, I like him a ton. 19.6 pass rush win rate, which was first in the FBS among qualified interior defensive linemen. He was first in pass rushing productivity. He was first in pass rush grade for PFF. Byron Murphy II is definitely, I think, securely in my top 10. I even have him above guys like Jaden Daniels. With Jaden Daniels, I think I probably am going to have a 6.50, which like a 6.50 is the grade determination for boom or bust, which is like, I think Jaden Daniels is a Justin Fields archetype of player. I think he needs to go to the right system, a system that's going to develop him as a passer. But, I mean, the rushing ability is bar none. He is probably he's just as good as a runner as a Lamar Jackson, as a Justin Fields. Some of these elite guys on the ground, he probably could run a 4.4. Maybe even the Anthony Richardson ability on the ground as well. But Jaden Daniels, I like him as a passer, especially as a deep field passer. He was he was graded as the highest deep thrower according to PFF, and he's fairly accurate and really productive from 20 yards plus. But overall for Jaden Daniels, I think there is one thing that I'm a bit iffy on, and that's him going from read 1 to read 2. I think he elects to eject the pocket at such a high level, and that's why he had so many carries. He will go to read 1, or he'll see, one read, and then he'll be like, all right, I'm going to tuck the ball in, and I'm going to start running and try to make something happen. I think that's the most important thing that I think he'll need to develop a bit more as a passer, as well as more intermediate and short accuracy. But if he does that, I think he's definitely I think he'll probably go within the top 5. If he develops as a passer, I think he'll be well worth the pick that he will end up being taken in. But it really just depends on the team, because quarterback is so team dependent and location dependent. But then I'm going on to Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State, right tackle. I like him a ton. He is a mauler of a run blocker, 6'6", 330 pounds, and he moves very well for being so heavy. He also has guard flexibility. I know that some people are forcing him more into that guard archetype, but I think he can definitely play tackle. It just depends whether he's going to be the help tackle, which is, by the way, like a tight end is going to be on his side, or a running back is going to be helping him off the edge. But he's a pretty strong player. He's also pretty technically sound as a pass blocker, but as a run blocker, I think it's bar none. I think he's the best run blocking tackle in this class. And then Leia Tulutu is my favorite edge rusher in this class, as you guys can kind of see here, the other two out of the top three. Leia Tulutu, I think, I think it could be the most consistent 3-down edge rusher. And what I mean by that is I think he's the best run defender out of the three. I think he's just as solid as a pass blocker or as a pass rusher as the rest of them. And as well as he's got the size, 6'4", 260-ish pounds listed according to ESPN. He had a 26% pass rush win rate. I know it was against kind of bad competition. UCLA didn't have the strongest strength of schedule this year. And against ranked opponents, he was just kind of all right. But I do like Leia Tulutu. I got to see him a little bit at the Senior Bowl. And overall, I would have him above Verse and Dallas Turner. The only thing that I'm concerned about Leia Tulutu is his pass rushing ability does not translate at all, and he is, just not a productive edge rusher. And then moving on to Jer'Zhan Newton, I like him a ton. He's my interior defensive lineman too. Jer'Zhan Newton, I've been high on him since last year. Great pass rusher as well. He had even more pressures. He had more pressures than Byron Murphy II with 46. Murphy had 45. But Jer'Zhan Newton had 8 sacks. He had a 15% pass rush win rate from the interior. He's also a solid run defender. I like Jer'Zhan Newton, even probably a bit more than T'Vondre Sweat, who won the Outland Trophy and was an All-American. But Jer'Zhan Newton was an All-American anyways. Jared Verse is another solid, I think, probably technically the most sound with his power, with his pass rush moves, compared to Sweat or compared to Turner and Leia Tulutu. I just don't think he has that pure bend that maybe Turner, that speed or bend that Turner probably has, or the dominance that Leia Tulutu showed at times. But Verse is again a 3-down edge rusher. I think he can play the run pretty well. He can also rush. He's also a consistent rusher. He didn't have the greatest start to the season, but he had 6 sacks or 5.5 sacks, according to ESPN, within the last 3 games, which boosted his peripheral numbers. I think he had finished with 9.5 sacks this year. I like Verse. I have him within my top 15, and I think he'll probably stay there. I will look forward to do his film breakdown probably within March, early April. And then you got T'Vondre Sweat, who I like a ton. T'Vondre Sweat is a run-defending monster, 12.8% run-stop rate, according to PFF, which is a crazy number. He was the highest-graded run defender, and he's also a pretty solid pass rusher as well. For 364 pounds, you think he's just a clogger. He's just a gap stopper, but he played the 3-eye. Or no, not the 3-eye. He played the 3-tech and the 2-eye. He didn't even play the nose. He played like 50 A-gap snaps. Meanwhile, Byron Murphy II played 150. Sweat was like, he acted really like a 3-tech, 4-3 defensive tackle. And that's such a he's huge for being that 3-tech. And he's also definitely athletic enough. I don't think he'll be 360. I think he'll come down to like 340 by the draft. But he had a Senior Bowl where I don't think he lost a rep. I do like T'Vondre Sweat a lot. Dallas Turner, I think there are a bit of questions for me. I see him a ton within people's top 10. I think he's a consensus top 10 guy. I will have him out of the top 10 securely. Dallas Turner, I like his pass rushing ability a lot. He's got some really nice splash plays where the sack numbers will be there. He had 10 sacks in 2023. However, I think the consistency as a pass rusher is a little lacking there, and I don't think he has true power at the position. It's more of just the athleticism and the speed and quickness off of the line of scrimmage that really helps him a lot. But the pure power is not really there. His bull rush isn't super effective, even though he likes to use it a ton. And I don't think he can run defend. He's also a little light for the position. He'll probably come in maybe under or just at 240 pounds for a 4-3 defensive end, which he played at the majority of the time at Alabama. I think he's an outside linebacker at the next level. But I think the splash plays will be there and the sack numbers will definitely be there. It's just a determination of his pass rush win rate and how productive he is on a snap-to-snap basis. Olu Fashanu, A lot of people pronounce his name super weird. But Olu Fashanu, I like him a bit, but I've ever so come down on him more and more and more as the draft process goes on, as more people that I respect talk about him. Originally in 2022, it was the narrative coming from was that he was a great run blocker or a solid run blocker. He had good pass rushing tech or pass blocking technique. He had great play recognition, good agility, good slide as well. But the more that I watched Penn State, the more that I was like, I don't think he's the greatest run blocker. I don't think he's the greatest even pass protector. I'm the lowest on him compared to the Fuagas and to the Joe Alts of the world. Shout out to Theo Ash just put up a TikTok about Olu Fashanu. I think he did a great job on that video. Go watch that. But the run blocking ability and the power is not really there. And the pass blocking, I mean, JT Tuimoloau was bullying him in the power department. I think if you're looking at him from a technical standpoint, if you're looking at him from a play recognition, from the agility and the flexibility, Olu Fashanu is definitely a good prospect. But if you're looking at from the power department, I don't think Olu kind of has that, which could be a recipe for him getting bullied at the next level. He's a very interesting study. I will probably have to look at him in the future. Cooper DeJean is a guy that I do like a ton, or I do like. He's got, I think he's perfectly got the athleticism and the ability to play on the boundary. I don't want him to be forced into a safety role. I don't want him to be forced into a slot role. I think has the skill to be like a cornerback too and travel with like the second best receiver. 50 something passer rating allowed, and he's 6'1", 200 pounds. I think he's perfectly adequate enough to play on the boundary. Brian Thomas Jr. is a guy that is a pure deep threat. He's kind of like not a Mike Williams, but like a Mike Williams route tree. The route tree that you'd expect from Mike Williams with the jump catch ability of, I don't even really have a good comparison for Brian Thomas Jr., but he had 17 touchdowns, which led the FBS. He had 1,177 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. was the primary go ball guy that Jayden Daniels loved to go to, and it worked a ton. He's got good catching ability. He's 6'4". He's got the size as well. I like Brian Thomas Jr. And then right next to him, I've got Adonai Mitchell. Mitchell is, to me, I think out of the top 5 receivers, or outside of Marvo, Neighbors, and Odunze. If we're looking at Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Legette, if we're looking at all those guys, I think Adonai Mitchell maybe has the most potential where he could be an actual number 1 guy at the next level. He's got good route running. He's got the size at 6'4", 196. He also has body control. He's got a good vertical. I like Adonai Mitchell. And then Quinyon Mitchell, right after him, out of Toledo, like he was miles ahead of anybody that Toledo really faced. Even though they didn't face any real high competition, he was just dominating wide receivers at the what Toledo plays in the Conference USA. Maybe they play in the Group of 5, but Quinyon Mitchell was like the last 2 years dominated at Toledo. Went to the Senior Bowl, faced some real NFL competition, and he played pretty well. But moving on to that competition level is something that he's definitely going to have to adjust to in the NFL level. But if he goes to the right situation, I think he could possibly be the cornerback 1 in this draft class. All right, so for the next 30-ish players, I am going to try to go a bit faster. Obviously, the first 20 guys are going to dictate a lot more of the attention. However, I'm going to try to get through the rest of these guys a little bit faster. Michael Penix Jr., we've talked about him a ton, or everybody's talked about him a ton. Good zip on these guys, some good zip on the ball, good accuracy, but the injury concerns are definitely there, and also the age. He's going to be 24 by the draft or 24 by the regular season, so that's a bit of a concern for some people. But I like Penix. He's a very borderline first round kind of guy for me. I think he could easily step into the league and have some good production, but he basically had zero production before going to Washington and joining Caleb DeBoer. So, and he went to Alabama actually. So it's very interesting to see if Penix even works out at the NFL level. I think he maybe starts out as, I don't know if I would give him the keys right away, but he's a very interesting conversation throughout this entire draft process. J.Z. Latham he is, for me, also a borderline tackle guy. He's a solid run blocker. He's a solid pass blocker. He doesn't allow pressure at a high level. But I don't know. Something is just not, for a first round tackle, something just has to like click for me. For late, something is just not. I don't know exactly what it is. I'll probably have to go into the film room to figure that out. But I do like Latham. He's going to be kind of right outside of the top, one of the top guys for me. But I mean, consistent run blocker, solid pass blocker, doesn't allow pressure at a high level. Like he should be a solid right tackle at the next level. Nate Wiggins and Terrion Arnold are like so close in the rankings between me. I don't know which one to pick. I like Wiggins a lot. He's been good in the last 2 years. He was real good at the last 2 years at Clemson, and I think he could fit in a man scheme. He can fit in his own scheme. He got good ball production as well. He can get some interceptions. He can travel with the number one guy. And then you got Terrion Arnold, who I've got some questions about with his speed, probably is my biggest question with him. But the same thing, like he has ball production, 5 interceptions in 2023, and he is very good against the run, and he can also slot flexibility. So the difference between them to me is so minute. I will probably end up giving them both the same grade, and those guys can actually even move up to the first round. I would say like if the players had potential to continue to move into the first round, obviously I have 20 first round grades. That could at maximum probably increase to 25. Again, I really love this draft class. It could move up to 25, or it could stay at 20, or it could go to maybe 19. It depends on how I view Quinyon Mitchell and I view the rest of the cornerback class. But I'll probably end up with maybe like 1 or 2 more first round grades. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I skipped Amarius Mims. Amarius Mims is a guy that he didn't have a ton of snaps, only like 600 career in around, no, 700 career snaps at Georgia in 3 years. But again, he does not allow a lot of pressures. I know he didn't qualify this year, but he would have been top 10 in least pressures allowed. And his pressure rate allowed and his pass blocking efficiency are 2 super high numbers according to PFF. Great pass blocker, solid run blocker as well. But the potential is definitely there. I think he is a little raw. I would consider him a little raw for the. And he didn't play. It didn't go in the Senior Bowl, which I don't think. I think he should have went, if possible. But Amarius Mims does have some good potential if he's able to be developed at the next level. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a guy that I was super high on in the preseason. I had him within my top 10. I've come down on him a little bit. I just think that some other cornerbacks have kind of impressed me a little bit more, but I still do like Kool-Aid McKinstry. He fits more in a man scheme for me, even though Alabama, it was more of a half zone, half man. That's kind of how they split the field, really. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, I thought, was always on the zone, the man side. He would travel with the one a lot more often. And I do like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think he's got some good footwork. He's a fluid corner, maybe a little bit small for the position, not the greatest against the run, but I think that's fine. Especially if he travels with the one. And then Patrick Paul out of Houston, as again, this guy's just a pure pass blocker. Run blocking is it's good, but he was the highest graded pass blocker according to PFF at like 91.6, which is super high. Does not allow a lot of pressures. I don't think he allowed a sack. But again, Houston, who do they really face, especially within the trenches? But I do like Patrick Paul, especially as a pass blocking archetype. Xavier Legette, huge Senior Bowl riser, he was listed at 6'3", according to ESPN, came in at 6'1" on the Senior Bowl measurements, but I mean, the jump ball ability is there. He's got some good speed for his build, and he's like a tank. When he gets moving, it's going to be hard to bring him down. He's going to get compared to DK Metcalf a ton, because he's kind of just got that stocky build, but great jump ball ability, great body control, good, really strong hands as well. And then you got Ladd McConkey, who I have just ever so come higher on. I don't think he was in my top 50 before the Senior Bowl, and he's moved all the way up to 29. Ladd McConkey's got some routes. When I watched him at Georgia, he was kind of all right. I really should go back and watch the tape on Ladd McConkey because he impressed a ton at the Senior Bowl with his routes. And he was coming off of an ankle injury, so he was supposed to take it easy. If that's him taking it easy, then... But again, with the deep threat ability, with the overall outside of his routes tree is super developed, and maybe not the deep speed or deep threat ability, but as a consistent like get open quick kind of guy, like an Adam Thielen, like that's what Ladd McConkey kind of reminds me of. And then Bo Nix, I do have him scraping the top 30. Bo Nix, I might even have him above. It's difficult for me whether I have him above Penix or not, because I do like Bo Nix is probably maybe the most accurate quarterback in the draft. I mean, his 77% accuracy rate at a 9.6 yards per attempt, that's really good. That's really, really high-level throwing. And Oregon played a lot of high-level competition this year. They played a ton of ranked teams, and he only lost to Washington. But Bo Nix, he's 24 years old. He faced Justin Herbert back in 2019. But he's matured ever so slightly as a quarterback. And I do think he'll crack my top 30. I think he'll probably go before guys like J.J. McCarthy, before maybe, I don't know. Apparently the league loves J.J. McCarthy. But I think he goes above Penix in the draft. I do think I'll probably come down on Penix within the next time you guys see me on the top 50. I've got Bo Nix's teammate Troy Franklin right below him. I will probably continue to come down on Troy Franklin. I mean, the 10% drop rate is something that really concerns me. And he also is not he's not a super strong receiver. Again, Brett Coleman gave them MVS comparison, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think Troy Franklin is more of a deep, straight line threat, fast guy at the NFL level, like a crossers. I've been saying this the whole draft process. I think he's that crossers style of wide receiver where he's just gonna, and he's just gonna get behind defenses, and he's not gonna like stop and try to find the soft zones. He's just kind of trying to take the top off the defense, and be like a straight line guy, or be like not like his routes aren't gonna be like hard, like slant routes. They're gonna be all fluid routes, like digs, crossers, posts, corners. Though that's kind of the route tree that Troy Franklin should excel on. And then Braylon Trice, he led the FBS in pressures with like 70 something, but obviously he had 950 snaps. He played in all 15 games at Washington, but he did have a 17.6 pass rush win rate, which is a pretty good number. But for Braylon Trice, I think he has the least pass rushing, not pass rushing ability compared to the rest of like the Dallas Turners, layout to the twos, Jared Verses. I just think he's kind of a step down from them. But he's a better edge setter he's going to probably come in at 260 from the combine. I think he's a better edge setter, better run defender. He's got a long wingspan. I think Braylon Trice is just going to be a solid kind of 2 down, maybe edge rusher who generates pressure at a kind of a lower level or lower rate. He really focuses on his power a lot and like quick pass rush moves instead of focusing on his like bend, which I don't really think he has too much of. But Braylon Trice, I think, is going to end up being my edge 4 over guys like Chop Robinson, who I'll get to in a sec. My best running back in this class is going to be Jonathan Brooks, which I have just outside of the top 32. Brooks is a guy that I do like, but he's coming off of an ACL tear. I think he maybe should have came back to school and rehabbed, and then had his rehab stint at Texas. Coming back, it's an ACL tear. That's a 2-year injury. Have his rehab year at Texas, just kind of deal with the maybe second. He would have been like a second round guy next year, but he would be fresh. He'd be ready to go and have his rookie year be that. But now he's coming into the draft early, as I think he's a redshirt sophomore, and he's like, I'm going to rehab off season and I'll be back for maybe the midseason mark or before the midseason mark. But Jonathan Brooks, I think, has the most real potential and the most consistency for all the running backs. He's got the contact balance. He has maybe not the best like speed, like pure speed, but he's got good acceleration. He's got a great juke. He has a real good vision as well. And he broke off a ton of big runs at Texas. I think he was their best offensive player there last year. And I think that I would have Brooks comfortably over the rest of the running backs. He'll probably be my only running back within my top 50. I know that I do have Esteem later, but I do like Jonathan Brooks a ton. He's my favorite running back in the class. Tyler Guyton is going to be my last early second rounder. He is a huge boomer bust guy. Because at Oklahoma, PFF only had him as like a 60-something grade, something real low. But he didn't allow a sack, and it's like he is a bit raw for the position. Technical-wise, he really just wants to kind of envelop guys. He's he's long, and he's 6'7", 320-ish pounds. But he really just wants to kind of envelop and punch guys back, and not hand fight, and just kind of just wrap guys around or kind of just overpower them. But he's got some potential. He definitely has the size at 6'7", 320. So a lot of guys are coming up on Tyler Guyton, especially after the Senior Bowl, and I talked to him a little bit on my Senior Bowl winners videos about him. Kamari Lassiter is a guy that I do also like a ton. I think he's a man guy at the next level. The only thing that I think is missing from his game is the pick production or the interception, the ball skills. He does have a ton of PBUs, but he had 1 interception in 3 years at Georgia, and he had 0 in and as a boundary starter, in 2 years, he had 0. But in reality, to me, that doesn't matter because guys like Sauce Gardner can have 0 interceptions and be a first-team All-Pro. So that kind of doesn't matter, but I do like Kamari Lassiter, especially as, a sticky kind of guy. Man, what did I say? Not a bump-and-run guy, but as, a man, like a sticky guy, stick coverage, just at the hip at all times. And then Chop Robinson, I do understand the hype around him, but I also don't because I'm definitely going to be lower on him than a ton of other people. Because Robinson, the production, actually, like the physical production, I don't think has ever been there. His pass rush win rate is somewhat lackluster. I think it was only like 13, 14, maybe something. He only accumulated like 35, maybe 40 pressures. If I'm wrong, let me know about that. In this year, only had around 300-ish snaps playing in all games, or Penn State, only like 10 games. I think he only played in 303 snaps, which is like, considering a guy that, like Chop Robinson, people have him within the top 3 for edge rushers, top 4, top 5. That's a 2-down edge rusher, 30 snaps a game for a defense that played 60 snaps plus. I know he was taken out in some games because Penn State's schedule was terrible this year, and his run defending ability is also not there. He's a pure pass rusher. He's got the bend, and he's got the bend. I think he's probably got the best speed and bend combination in the class, but he only had 3 sacks, which is, sack numbers don't matter a ton, but I care about the pressure and the pressure win rate and the productivity. It's a little lacking. I do think he needs to go to the right situation, and I think immediately if a team drafts him in the first round, he's going to be like Will McDonald last year. Like Will McDonald was only in on third downs. That might be what happens to Chop Robinson, and he'll need to have the productivity to garner him being put in on first and second down, especially on run plays, which he'll be taken out of. Tez Walker is a guy that I'm also a little lower on. I will probably continue to be lower on him through the draft process. Walker had a bit of, he had an issue with the NCAA where he wasn't allowed to play for the first 4 or 5 games. Then when he played, he went off on a 5-game, 100-yard receiving streak with Drake May, had 699 yards, 7 touchdowns. So in his time playing in 8 games, he was relatively very productive. But the thing about Tez Walker was the man coverage seemed to affect him. And especially when the Senior Bowl game was played, he had like 5 targets and came down with none of them. Or came down with, I think, one of them. But there were 3 long, deep throws where he was slowing down. He was trying to make like one-handers. That is just, I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's a Senior Bowl. It's a Senior Bowl game. But when I was watching when I was watching UNC when he was playing, I did like his deep threat ability and his consistency. His route tree isn't the most developed either, in my opinion. But the hands are also, his contested catch ability at UNC was really there because it came down with 65% of all his contested catches. It's just the man coverage ability that I think is a bit concerning when he goes up against more physical cornerbacks. Darius Robinson, dude measured in at 6'5", 286 pounds, and he plays the 5 tech, which the 5 tech is pretend the tackle is right here, and the tight end is right here, the 5 tech is right here, which is insane. And he's got a power rush. He's got a really good power rush. Guys like Daniel Jeremiah got really high on Darius Robinson after the Senior Bowl. Ennis Rickenstraw, I think my favorite cornerback compared to him are Chris Abrams-Durain. Rickenstraw, zone guy. I mean, to be fair, Chris Abrams-Durain and Ennis Rickenstraw can both play man or zone. Rickenstraw is just, he's got good size. He's like 6'1", 195 to 196 something. Good ball production as well. I forgot which amount of how many picks he got, but in my opinion, I thought he was the best cornerback from Missouri. And then I guess we'll move on to the top 10 guys now. We'll finish off the list strong. JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, my favorite center in the draft class, my favorite interior offensive lineman in this draft. He allowed 3 pressures. And he was the highest graded pass blocker for all centers. Senior Bowl, he probably didn't lose a rep. Dude, I think Jackson Powers Johnson will probably continue to elevate on this list. I think if there are a few teams that in the late first round that would consider taking center, Jackson Powers Johnson I think is as close as you're going to get to like a Creed. Like there have been 2 really good centers that were drafted in recent memory, Creed Humphreys in 2021 and then Tyler Linderbaum in 2022. JPJ I think is that second round gem that you're going to get that's going to be a center for a while. And then Jatavion Sanders, I like him a ton. Athletic, fast tight end. He also had a 0% drop percentage, which is basically like no drops. Second most productive, in my opinion, relative to team and relative to opportunity, next to Brock Bowers. Jatavion Sanders, 2 thumbs up. I know I have like basically 1.2% or 1.2 point difference or grade difference between Sanders and Brock Bowers, and also like a 30 player difference. It's not that different. Jatavion Sanders is like just as a productive, or could be just as a productive tight end at the next level because he's got the athleticism, he's got the speed and the quickness. He can also block a little bit. I like Sanders. And then Peyton Wilson is my inside linebacker one. I like him a ton. He won the Defensive Player of the Year for the college, he won the College Football Defensive Player of the Year. I forgot what award that actually was, but this dude is a Mike. He's a Mike through and through. He can run defend really well. He's got phenomenal athleticism. He can cover. I think he's the best cover linebacker. Maybe, arguably, he's the best cover linebacker in this class. 44 passer rating allowed with 3 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. He also, he can also rush the passer super well. He's fast, and he's also 6'4", 238 pounds. But he's 23, going on 24. He's been in the NCAA for a good bit as well. Also had a huge injury I think he had an ACL in 2021. But coming back fully out after that, Peyton Wilson was crazy good at NC State this year. Jordan Morgan at Arizona, another solid guy. He had a good Senior Bowl as well. Solid pass blocker, good enough run blocker. Saw him at Arizona. Didn't allow. I watched the Utah game, Utah-Arizona. I did that for PFF. Disclaimer, I work for PFF. I do data analytics for them. I watched them at Oregon. He had to go up against Jonah Ellis, and he did a very good job. So Jordan Morgan will definitely ended up in my top 50 in my 1.0. Adrian Cooper, Daniel Jeremiah has him at his top 20, and he has him above Peyton Wilson. Edgerrin Cooper, I do also like. I'll probably end up bringing Edgerrin Cooper and bringing Peyton Wilson firmly within my top 40 by the end of this draft cycle, because I've just been getting increasingly higher on them. Edgerrin Cooper he reminds me a ton of like Patrick Queen, Devin White, those LB2s who are more of that jack type of the jack of all trades. Edgerrin Cooper will blitz a ton from the A gap. He had 8 sacks, as well as he had like a 90% man coverage grade or something, maybe not 90, but something super high, where I think he can travel with tight ends in man coverage. I think he can drop back a ton. He can also defend the run. He's got the athleticism and the speed. He's a pretty fast linebacker. I think he's a weak side archetype, but the linebacker archetypes are kind of getting phased out of football, because there is not really there is a Mike, but it's really like 2 linebackers, because the NFL is moving more to a nickel base instead of a 3 linebacker base, so it's not strong weak side Mike. It's more like just the 2 inside linebackers. He fits more into the weak side, and then you got the Mike. But I do like Edgerrin Cooper. I think he can definitely travel with tight ends and can blitz the passer effectively. Braden Fisk, Senior Bowl MVP. Kind of all I needed to say. He dominated the Senior Bowl. He's got some good power, but really he's just technically super sound. His pass rush moves at the Senior Bowl were very effective. He's got great athleticism and quickness for an interior defensive lineman. I think that a lot of those guys share that in this draft. But I like Braden Fisk. Chris Braswell was the second Alabama edge rusher next to Dallas Turner, and he was just as productive. He had like 8 sacks. He had 1 less pressure than Dallas Turner at like 53, and his pass rush win rate at like 16% was pretty much the same. Chris Braswell, again, good speed, good solid bend, good power off the edge. Just kind of a bit of a step down from a guy like maybe a Dallas Turner, maybe a Braylon Trice. But I do think Chris Braswell, again, a securely top 50 guy. Jalen Polk is somebody that I don't see at all. I don't really see Jalen Polk in anybody's top 50 ever. But Jalen Polk, I think, is super underrated. He had like 1,200 yards at Washington. He is, again, a similar archetype to Rome Odunze, where he's got great body control, good contested catch ability, and he's got good speed. I think Jalen Polk is being slept on in this draft rotation. I have securely above guys probably like Keon Coleman or Xavier Worthy, who I'll get to in a minute. But Chris Abrams-Durain, he might be my slot 1, even though he did play boundary at Missouri. He's around 5'11", 190 pounds. I think that there's a possibility he can move to the slot and be perfectly good. Solid run defender, solid coverage guy, good technique, and a fluid cornerback as well, like him out of Missouri. Keon Coleman is a jump ball archetype through and through. I don't think he has a super developed route tree. I don't think he's super quick or fast, or, his routes aren't really snappy, but he is like his ability at the catch point is bar none. And I mean, he's a fade ball expert. Keon Coleman, I think he's just kind of a splash play. I think he's a splash play guy at the NFL level. If anyone was going to get that Mike Williams comparison, it's Keon Coleman. I think that's going to end up being my comp at the end of the day. Is pretty much Mike Williams. And then Xavier Worthy, I don't know whether he's going to continue to be in my top 20. I think I'm coming ever so slower and lower on him. I think he's a second-round guy. He is immediately an elite punt returner because he was an all-pro punt returner at Texas. He is very quick and fast, but he's a little undersized. He's only around 170-something pounds. But again, a deep threat guy. He's a slot at the next level, in my opinion. But he outproduced. He had 1,000 yards. He outproduced not Xavier Worthy. I don't know. He outproduced Adonai Mitchell, and he's also a good after the catch wide receiver. So he put himself into my top 50 for my 1.0. Let's get to the quick honorable mentions. Audric Estim, Cameron Kinchens, JJ McCarthy. I know some people would probably look at him to be in my top 50. I don't know. I'm a little low on JJ McCarthy. I think maybe his production was a bit squandered at Michigan because Blake Corum Blake Corum like got all of his touchdowns. Blake Corum had like 20 touchdowns this year. I think 27, some ridiculous number. So like any end zone or any red zone situation, Blake Corum was gonna steal JJ's touchdowns. But JJ McCarthy, 71.4% completion percentage on the run, which is a very that's a sick number. Highest graded quarterback throwing on the run. But I mean, in big games, he makes very frequent mistakes. He is also not a big quarterback. He is small for the position. He also does not have spectacular arm strength or arm talent, but the accuracy is there. The throw on the run is there. But I don't know. I'd probably keep him out of my top 50. But he probably would be my first or my highest graded third round quarterback. And then Bucky Irving, my running back 3, Zach Frazier, Gabriel Murphy, and Troy Fautanu. That's going to do it for my top 50. Let me know your view. Let me know your thoughts on my top 50. Let me know some of your rankings. Let me know some guys that I should add in my top 50 or some guys that I should change. And that's going to do it. Wish you guys like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.